Well, why don't we call our meeting to order this morning at 9:02 a.m. In the true spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge all those who call this land home now and for thousands of years in the past. May we respect each other and find understanding together and recognize the benefits that this land provides to all of us. You have your agenda before you. Just one note in there, we have one delegation today. We have a 10 a.m. delegation. Other than that, we don't have any time commitments. So with that, as I noted, you have been presented an agenda. Are there any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you, John. John has moved to adopt the agenda as presented. Any discussion? If not, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Moving down, item C, adoption of the minutes. Before you, you have the County Council meeting minutes from January 18th, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, any issues arising from the minutes? Mark?
Move the adoption of the minutes of January 18th, 2024.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved for the acceptance of the approval of the January 18th, 2024 County Council meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor?
Yeah.
Opposed? That's carried. Morning, Morris.
Good morning.
Okay, we can move down then. Item D, subdivision applications. We have one subdivision application this morning. Subdivision application 2023-0-156, Traber. And with that, I'll throw to our manager, Planning and Development, Hillary Jansen. Hillary?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Council. As mentioned, we have one subdivision for County Council to consider acting as the subdivision authority. This application is in the hamlet of Monarch, just off of Eastman Street, so on the south side of Monarch. And the application is to subdivide a 0.44 acre title into two equal lots being 0.22 acres each in size for Hamlet residential use. The proposed subdivision does meet the criteria, all of the subdivision criteria of the land use bylaw. The parcel size exceeds the minimum parcel size allowed within the hamlets. And there, just as a note, there is ample water and sewer access in this particular hamlet. And it was identified in the Hamlet growth study as a parcel that could be split, so for infill development. And with that, I will pass the rest of the comments on to Steve and with the recommendation.
Good morning, Reuben Council. This application in front of you is to accommodate some more exciting growth in the hamlet of Monarch. We have a lot here on Eastman Road that the applicant wishes to split into two equal lots. The resulting proposed lots will be 80 by 120 feet inside, which exceeds your hamlet minimum bylaw size of 50 by 100 feet. So they're larger than what the minimum allows. It doesn't display from the time that the photo was taken, but there was a former mobile home manufactured dwelling that was on the lot on the east side. That has been removed. So there's just a shed left towards the back on the lane. So with this subdivision, with the two lots, you'll have the opportunity for two new dwellings to be constructed on Eastman there on this parcel once it's subdivided into two. The as mentioned that with the servicings available in the hamlet, this subdivision is possible. There is existing water and sewer to the east portion where the former mobile manufactured home is sitting. They'll require a new connection for the proposed west vacant lot. That will be have to be done at their expense for the cost of hooking up to that connection. There's also existing approaches in place to the east lot there, and they had put in a culvert and started to put an approach in as well to the new west lot, so the access to Eastman Road on the west side as well. So with that, during the referral, there was no requirements by any utility companies, no objections or concerns were received. As part of the routine for the Hamlet of Monarch, as it is flagged by the province for historical resources, it was referred to them. They did respond to this application and they waived any historical resource requirements, so nothing will have to be done there. So with that, there was no objections received, and approval granted as well from Alberta Transportation. Have recommended an approval to you. It complies with the land use bylaw for the use and exceeds the minimum lot size. There'd be 5 conditions on that, which is in the draft resolution in front of you. And that would include that the taxes are paid up to date, that a development agreement, if required, be entered into, that the applicant, at their expense, pay for the installation and the connection to the Lethbridge County's utilities for the hamlet there, that they provide a surveyor sketch to illustrate the lot dimensions and where that shed is sitting on towards the back lane there, so you can ensure it meets the setbacks, and that their final plan from the surveyor be submitted for final endorsement. So with those conditions on there, that's the recommendation in front of you, is to approve this subdivision.
Thanks, Steve. I would open up to council. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under the conditions, we have the sewer connection or any connection fees owing. Is the new lot going to be subject to the connection fee that existing lots had for putting in lines? I know there's some that they deferred their payment until they developed, and so that ran up to being many thousands of dollars. Are we going to levy that against a new lot as well?
All the new lots in Monarch pay for the cost of the installation of the utilities just as per that straight cost.
Okay.
Because there's no outstanding debenture owing in Monarch anymore. For the ones that everybody who's paid should have it already done or on their title, but this one doesn't have it, they didn't
Okay, so they're
apply
not-
for the second one, right?
They won't be subject to
No.
that as well. Okay. Okay, with that then, I'd like to move the recommendation that subdivision application 2023-0156 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, Eric. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, Hillary. The HMH district standard, if you were to build a house there, is it different than the HMH? Or how does that, what does that mean?
So
exactly?
that acronym is for Hamlet manufactured home. So this area at one point in time was designated as a manufactured home park. But any new residences that are located in here, they can meet the same setback requirements as the regular Hamlet residential. So as council may recall, when we're looking at our land use bylaw, we have proposed to change this area just to straight Hamlet residential instead of manufactured home park, because that's predominantly what's been happening in this particular area over the last 30 years. So, but yes, they can meet all the setbacks and the standards to either of those districts. So,
John?
Sorry, just elaborating on that a little bit, just so that I understand this completely. If somebody wanted to build an actual stick-built house there, they would be able to do so.
yes, that's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
it's allowed in both districts. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other discussion? Eric has moved the recommendation that subdivision application 2023-0-156 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Hillary.
Thank you.
We can move down in our agendas. F, department reports. There's been a request just to flip these two, so we'll go to F 1.2 first, the 2023 Community Peace Officer Annual Report, and we will start there. We have our Community Peace Officer, David Entz. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Council. So today I present the annual county CPO program report for the 2023 calendar year. There's no decision required by council. It's for information purposes only. And council will be provided the opportunity to ask questions if they choose to. Just a bit of background information is Lethbridge County has, as you all know, one peace officer, provide education and enforcement on a variety of Lethbridge County bylaws. I'm authorized to enforce the Traffic Safety Act, regulations under the Act. I'm also a certified commercial vehicle inspector. I'm part of the Development and Infrastructure Department and report to the Manager of Planning and Development, Hillary Jensen. Some of the notable events within the 2023 calendar year were there were 206 case reports for the year, which is consistent with the 2022 calendar year. The Highway Protection Bylaw and commercial vehicle inspections have seen a slight increase. Traffic complaints have decreased slightly. November 2023, which is one of my highlights, saw the completion of an almost 2-year large property cleanup with the assistance of Alberta Health Services and a hoarder specialist, and I can't thank them enough for the collaboration that it took for all of us working together and coming to a successful conclusion. I also provided, I know this goes back to the Lethbridge International Air Show, but I provided traffic control there with the Coaldale Peace Officers and the RCMP. I attended the annual Alberta Municipal Enforcement Association conference in Calgary, and a part of that, after that, I went up for another one-day advanced apprehension and dog handling course, which I also presented then to county staff on how to prevent encounters with a potential aggressive dog. Just going down Lethbridge County bylaws, so the Highway Protection Bylaw and the Dog Control Bylaw are two of the main bylaws which I generally work under, and they have the highest call for service. Snow and guns watering the road, it's no surprise those are the highest calls for service, except for this winter. We had 2 weeks of snow now. County residents are educated and reminded that snow cannot be pushed within the county right away. Some need a reminder once, some up to 2 or 3 times, and then they finally get it. And then it's always a constant battle with handguns throughout the summer, trying to, if I have too many issues with one particular individual, I'll actually go onto the property and have a conversation with them and just explain to them the damages that can result with excess water, and it seems that helps if I actually show up in person versus just over the phone. The majority of dog complaints fall into the category of excessive barking, running at large, or stray dogs. All stray dogs are taken to Misty Creek Dog Rescue. She holds them for 72 hours, and if nobody calls or claims them, then she keeps them and adopts them out. Traffic enforcement, as we all know, Lethbridge County has a road network of approximately 2,000 kilometers. I attempt to patrol each division equally. However, priority is given to areas that generate traffic complaints or have a higher traffic count. In general, speeding, intersection safety, and commercial vehicles account for all traffic education enforcement. The months between April and November are the busiest time for me. During that time period, farmers come out with their seeding equipment. It's followed by silage haul, grain harvest, and then the sugar beet harvest. And of course, manure haul is pretty much steady throughout the year. During the summer, I've been granted an additional 100 hours, which I try to spread out into the evenings and then work some weekends and Saturdays, which has been beneficial. And it is worth mentioning also on numerous occasions in Shaughnessy, that 60-kilometer zone, it seems like people just don't see the maximum 60 up ahead of than 60. Just as recently as yesterday, I had a semi there was doing 97 through Shaughnessy, saying he didn't see the 60 sign because he was looking at his GPS. So I just be careful going through there, I guess. And same with the one in Iron Springs doesn't seem to be as bad, but the Shaughnessy one, I can be there sometimes for, I don't know, 20 minutes and get people like over 40 kilometers an hour. Joint force operations, I regularly work with the local sheriffs or the local CPOs in the area, and the RCMP always ready to assist when requested. Commercial vehicle inspections. This past year, I inspected a total of 58 commercial vehicles. 40 of them were level 1 inspections, which a level 1 inspection is where I actually go under, like around the truck and underneath. Level 2 inspections are ones where we just inspect the outside, but we don't go underneath the truck. So of all those, 13 passed, 19 required attention, which simply means they're not out of service, but the repairs have to be made after they finish that particular load. And 26 were placed out of service, which is with a total of 7.5% failed inspection, which is pretty consistent. There was one that stands out in my mind, which I will likely not forget in a long time, which he had 16 critical items, 8 of which were out of service, 8 required attention, and the operator, I've got a picture which I can show later, because I had crimped off an airline with a vice grip, and it didn't not just happen that morning, that had been there for some time. And the unit failed the air loss test. So what I mean by that is an engine has to be idling at 90 psi, and then when he applies his brake, he has to either maintain the air pressure or the air pressure has to build, but his leaks were so significant that the air pressure dropped. All airbags on the trailer were deflated, cords were exposed on some tires, and one wheel had loose lug nuts. Also, some of the brakes were out of adjustment. So during that time period, revenue received was 100,093, 738. Fines were issued for this period. Approximately 50% will eventually come back to the county. The other 50% goes back to the province and the Victims of Crime Fund. So any ticket that's written, 20% automatically goes to the Victims of Crime Fund. That's calculated into every fine. The province takes the other 30%, and the county gets approximately 50% of it. Just so this is just showing the. So he had a total of 6 airbags that were all deflated. Yeah, there you go. Nice catch. So here's this vice grip. Like this is, and that wasn't put there that morning. That's been there for a while. And then this is a common find with tires. I know tires are expensive. We all try and get the maximum use out of them, but this is way beyond its maximum use. And that is a very common thing that we find as well. I had one particular truck as well. I think he had it's a 3-axle truck. Most of the tires were gone, so I went back later and they replaced the all set of the tires. This is the one. So this one was before I show you, it was, before I go one under the truck, I just asked the operator if he had been under the truck lately to do an inspection. I was promised it hadn't been done the day prior. So I said, well, it should be a very quick inspection then. We'll be in and out pretty quick. Well, I went underneath, and this is what I found. So yeah, nobody has been under that truck for a long time. And they should have even heard, just driving down the road, they should have heard that U-joint. And I was going to show you one more. And I also tend to find one of these one per year. Again, the manure drag holes being out on the road, the county was never notified. And then it actually snowed overnight, but I stayed around that night just to make sure it got removed. Because it is a danger to the other motorists on the road if they have no warning that some object is out on the road. Now I support this. I really like the idea of manure drag hoses, but not out on the road where other motorists could potentially run into them. And that's my report. Any questions?
Thank you, David. Any questions from council? Go ahead, Lauren, Mark, Klaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two questions come to my mind. You talked about the fines for victims, or the paybacks to victims. What exactly does that mean?
So to my understanding, so victims of crime, so say someone is involved in I would imagine a criminal offense, and they need access to lawyers or to counseling. I believe, don't hold me to that, but I believe that's where that money is being used to help victims that were involved in a serious crime.
Okay, thank you. And my other question was, the dog control, is your current provider of the service, is that working pretty good?
Yeah, I'm very thankful for her. It's actually, she's never said no to any of my dogs, and she's very good.
Mark?
Thanks, Troy. Just a quick question. When we would collaborate with the RCMP and the sheriffs, so do the sheriffs, when they do check stops, you don't have to be present when they do them? They can do them on their own? It would just be the sheriffs?
Oh, for sure they can do them on their own, yes.
Okay. We were coming home last month, and we were at the four-way stop there on Sunnyside Road, and got to know the guy really well. It was really good. It was fun. But anyway, they were really good, so it was good to see him out there. So I was just curious. So.
Yeah. Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with the trucks and the inspections I have, the ones that failed, are the majority long haul or just local that you're dealing with there?
The majority of inspections that I do, those are local trucks. There would be very few long hauls, if any, in my inspections.
I just wanted to know if the like on the long haul trucks, I mean, and they're going quite a ways. Are the trucks in that bad shape as that the local trucks are? That's what basically.
Well, if I compare my failure rate to other, like you can see in the news media, when they do inspections like in Calgary or they pop up anywhere, those numbers are anywhere from 60 to 77% failure rate. So that is pretty steady across the board.
Any other questions for David? If not, thank you very much, David. Appreciate the report. Thank you.
Thanks.
We can then move to F1.1, Planning and Development Department 2023 Annual Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just pulling up
Yeah, no
a
worries.
map that I forgot to put in the report that I typically do. There we go. So with regards to the Planning and Development Department in 2023, as you know, the Planning and Development Department includes many facets. So we look at development permitting and planning, obviously is in our name, and that's the main thing that we work on. We also work on the intermunicipal development plans, the municipal development plans. So intermunicipal relations is another big part of what we do. We work on planning projects like the land use bylaw to ensure that our documents are up to date regularly and are relevant to our citizens and to the county strategic plan. We look at road closures and road licensing, land sales, leases, The enforcement of land use bylaws, so Nathan does a lot of the enforcement action, so sending out the letters. We work in collaboration with David quite often on those, just because it's good to have that, the peace officer presence there for when situations get a wee bit sticky. And we also work obviously with all the other departments, so infrastructure, operations, they are all integral to making sure that the county has sustainable and efficient planning and development. So with regards to the projects that we completed or that we worked on in the last year, we completed the road naming policy, which was brought to County Council in the fall. We completed the Development Authority bylaw, which was just to update that particular bylaw to make sure that it was current and that the Development Authority who's designated is who's actually doing it within the county. We completed the internal audit for the safety codes, so we are accredited in the safety codes in all of the disciplines within the Safety Codes Act. And so we have to do an internal audit, and I think every about 4 or 5 years we do an external audit for that, which is done by the Safety Codes Council. And we did the land use bylaw review and update, which council was involved with 3 workshops, and then working with Steve Hardy at the Old Man River Regional Services Commission. We've pretty much completed that draft, and we'll be bringing that forward to council in the next month. For the Development Authority, there is 224 development permit applications were received. This is a slight increase from 2022, where we saw 219 development applications. The construction value was fairly high this year, coming in at just over $304 million, which was quite a bit higher than the last year. The McCain facility expansion was the main driver behind that particular value. Taking out that particular McCain value, the construction value was at just around $65 million. So still a little bit up from 2022. So we are seeing robust development still happening in the county, regardless of any economic kind of drivers behind that. So in 2023, with regards to the development permits, and that's the graph that I have up for you to see, we issued 217 development permits. 4 development permits were refused, 2 were withdrawn, and then the remaining are included in this chart. So you can see accessory buildings and residential development is the majority of our development within the county. Commercial development has been pretty steady over the last 4 years, and agricultural buildings, which is kind of like your barn shops, things that are agriculturally related, have kind of they swung up in 2021, and now they're kind of leveling out again. And the rest, there's some minor home occupations, institutional signage, demolitions that occur, which are a lot less common than the other 4 categories. With regards to the safety codes, 762 safety codes permits were issued by Park Enterprises, who is our contracted agency for all the safety codes within Lethbridge County. This is a little bit up from 2022. I think it's been pretty steady over the last few years. Park Enterprises has seen some changes in staff over the last year, and there was a lot of flux this summer, but they've definitely leveled out over the last 6 months, and we're quite happy with the work that they've been doing over the last few months in terms of making sure that permits are being issued in a timely manner for our residents. One of the main sources of revenue for the Planning and Development Department and for the county in general is through our contract with Park Enterprises. In 2023, it came in at $307,000, just over that, which was once again higher than our revenue in 2022, once again due to the McCain's facility. With a large manufacturing facility or processing facility such as that, obviously the safety codes permits are quite substantial. There's a lot of work that has to go into making sure that they're meeting all the codes. With regards to the subdivision, so County Council, sitting as a subdivision authority, made 33 decisions on subdivision applications, all of which were approved. We had one appeal, so with development and subdivision appeals, we had one appeal that was submitted against a development permit this past summer for a home occupation for a distillery, and that was heard by the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. This appeal was upheld, so the adjacent landowners appealed this particular development permit application, And so the appeal was upheld, meaning that the development permit was denied by the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. That was the only appeal process that we had to go through this year, and it was done online since they're mostly out of the Edmonton area. For redesignations, we had not a lot of redesignations this past year, just 5 of them, all of which were approved by County Council. Some highlights were there was a couple of country residential redesignations in there, one to rural commercial to business light industrial, one from rural agriculture to rural general industrial, which was the Transmark facility down on Highway 4. So nothing of great note there. There was 2 area structure plans. One was for that country residential development in the south end of the county, and then the Chinook Industrial Park did an amendment to their plan so that they could develop the now, the infrastructure is just being installed, but it's called the Frontier Business Park. And so that we're anticipating we will see a lot of development happening in there in this next year. At least 2 applications are kind of on hold right now until we can get the title sorted out, but we anticipate some spring construction happening in that particular area. So it's an up-and-coming business park for Lethbridge County. Road closures, we had many road closures. Some of them were approved, 2 of them were approved, and some of them received first reading and are at Alberta Transportation. We have found that all those have to go to Edmonton. They don't go to the local office for approval. They have to be signed by the Minister of Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors. So it's a very lengthy process. Unfortunately, some of our road closures have been waiting for about a year and just over a year. So I'm hoping to hear back from them shortly on a number of them. For land sales and leases, we did do some land sales and leases. The River Brink Estates pond, it was one of them. The former Greater Sheds, I should say, in Barons and Colehurst were sold to, one was sold to the town of Colehurst, and then in Barons, that one was sold to a private landowner. And we did complete another sale of some lands within the CP right-of-way. A landowner decided that they were willing to purchase the land that was no longer required for the CP railway. That project has been going on, I do believe, since 2011. So we're slowly whittling. I think that may have been the last one. So intermunicipally, and with regards to external agencies, so we did 24 intermunicipal referrals. So anytime a town, we have the IDPs, intermunicipal development plans between the towns, the rurals, and so anytime there's a use that's considered discretionary or they're asking for a waiver of a standard, we get a referral, and we review that to see if there's any concerns on the county's behalf. None of them have had any concerns on them. If there was, they would be brought forward to County Council for consideration. And then lastly, just with regards to the Natural Resources Conservation Board, we also review and respond to referrals from them. We had 13 this last year. There was a couple that had some more considerations, and one went for a board review. It was ultimately passed. That was in the Nobleford area. But with that, that is my planning and development report for 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary.
Too late, I'm already done.
Thanks, Devin.
If you need me to go through the whole thing again, I certainly can.
Thank you, Hillary. I would open it up to council for any questions you might have of Hillary's report. Seeing none. Thank you very much,
Thank
Hillary.
you.
We can move in our agendas. F2, Corporate Services. F2.1, Gem of the West Museum Society donation request.
Good
And with
morning,
that-
Mr. Chairman.
Morning, Jen.
Council. So we have a request in front of council that came from the Gem of the West Museum Society. The request is with regards to an event, a family community event they plan to host on May 4th. The intent of the event is to promote the museum both for both municipal and rural communities. It will also signify the museum's opening for the upcoming season. They plan to showcase the work that they do in preserving the history of the area, well, Coaldale and surrounding areas. We'll have different events and entertainment going on throughout the day. And when they held the event last year, they had over 400 people visit throughout the day. They've also noted that the Gem of the West mission is to preserve and portray the history and culture of the Coaldale area from its earliest times to present. They do this in the historic Mennonite Brethren Church building located on the north end of the town of Coaldale. Looking at the current policy 161 with regards to donations, it does speak to eligibility, including an event that is taking place within the county boundaries and that is being held for the enjoyment and benefit of the general public, as well if it is something that is hosted annually. So with that, administration has made the recommendation that council provide a donation to the Gem of the West Museum Society for their free family event in the amount of $500 as per policy number 161. With that, they did request an amount of $2,000, but based on the policy, the way it's written, the recommendation is for $5,000.
Thank you, Jen. Open up to council. Mark, go ahead.
Thanks, Tori. Yeah, I'd support the $500. We attended last year with the grandkids, and it was a great event. And there's people moving around, a lot of young kids and families, and it's a great facility. Their staff, or the group of volunteers they have, is really good, and they've put a lot of time and effort into that facility over the years, building it up. So I think it'd be a great opportunity for the county to be part of that. So the $500, I'd be absolutely in support of.
Any other comments, discussion from council?
I'm back, thank you. So I'd like to move the county council provide a donation to the Gem of the West Museum Society for their free family event in the amount of $500 as per policy number 161.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any further discussion? Mark has moved the recommendation that county council provide a donation to the Gem of the West Museum Society for their free family event in the amount of $500 as per policy 161. If there's no further discussion, call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thanks, Mark. Moving down. Bylaw number 24-005, Community Aggregate Payment Levy. Jen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As part of the next report, which is the Schedule of Fees review, and we brought forward some amendments there, we were looking at the Community Aggregate Payment Levy that's currently in place, and some of this came from discussions during budget time. But what administration has proposed that the bylaw that is currently in place, which was passed in 2016, includes the levy portion in a section of the bylaw, and it is administration's recommendation that that be moved to the Schedule of Fees, as the Schedule of Fees is something that is considered annually, and rather than amending the cap levy bylaw, which really lays out the purpose of having this community aggregate payment in place, we can just put the fees under this fee schedule. So that's really the only change to this particular bylaw, is just to move that, amend that section of this bylaw, and then move it to the Schedule of Fees. So we're not eliminating the fee by any means. I believe actually the wording that was put in place was, rather than having what the calculation is, just that the levy rate to be applied throughout Lethbridge County will be included in the Schedule of Fees bylaw. And that's section 5.1.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. Any questions from council? Go ahead, John.
I'd like to move the bylaw 24-005, the Community Aggregate Payment Levy bylaw, be read a first time.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? John has moved that bylaw 24-005, Community Aggregate Payment Levy bylaw be read a first time. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Lauren?
I would move the bylaw 24-005, community aggregate payment levy, be read for a second time.
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren has moved that bylaw 24-005, Community Aggregate Payment Levy bylaw be read for a second time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that council consider reading bylaw 24-005, community aggregate payment levy a third time.
Thank you, Eric. Eric has moved that county council consider reading bylaw 24-005, community aggregate payment levy a third time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So we can proceed to third reading. Go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that bylaw 24-005, community aggregate payment levy bylaw be read a third time.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved that bylaw 24-005, community aggregate payment levy bylaw be read a third time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
We can then go down to that schedule of fees. F2.3, bylaw 24-006, the schedule of fees. Jen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as mentioned, we have before you the schedule of fees, which has been reviewed by each of the department managers, directors, and/or supervisors with regards to what fees, if any, needed amending. If you move into the background information, it summarizes the majority of the changes. We did do a pretty thorough review, I believe it was last year or the year before, specifically with planning and development. So there weren't a lot of changes, but there were a few items that were felt needed to be amended. So one is that fee changes identified with regards to dust control. So this was discussed through budget as well, based on just costs, current costs for the program itself. So it's proposed to increase from $6 to $6.50 per linear meter up to 200 meters, and from $12 to $13 per linear meter over that 200 meters. This was proposed within the budget. The next item is with regards to the community aggregate payment levy. Currently, that levy is charged on a quarterly basis. We have the operators, I guess, or owners of such sites submit their tonnage, and we charge them 25 cents for sand and gravel. So it is being proposed that increase by 5 cents. There has not been an increase to this rate since the initial bylaw was passed back in 2016. So it moved from 25 cents per ton to 30 cents. Also an increase of $5 to the custom map books, the hard copies of the maps, the wall maps. Just the cost of printing materials and supplies has increased, and that's another fee that we haven't made changes to for several years. So that's $5 on those. And I can get into the fee schedule and we can see the comparison there. In planning and development, if you do have questions about these increases, I'll turn to Hillary, but we added an encroachment agreement application fee for $100 and increased the fees for road allowance licenses of occupation from 15 to 20 per acre per year for pasture land, and from $30 to $40 per acre per year on cultivated land. So pasture and cultivated fees were also under leasing of farmland. And the Ag Service Board added a fee for the administration of weed notices, which will be a direct cost plus 50%, indirect charge to a maximum of $500. So we can go to the schedule of fees if council would like. I was just going to, if you look at section 17 and 19, that's where Hillary addresses those planning and development fees, as well as down under 25 where that encroachment agreement application has been added for $100. Further down in the schedule, quite a ways, under, I guess this is D for Public Works, number 13. This is where the community aggregate payment levy that came out of the previous bylaw that was amended by council, moving from 25 cents to 30, and also the dust control is theirs, as council can see, and the Ag Services Board weed notice fee, which has been added. Underneath that, it's the section G, which is the GIS schedule of fees, and there you can see where the custom work map making, the hourly charge has gone from 65 to 70. The wall maps, which are the big maps, like the one beside you there, from 25 to 30. It's not quite that big that we sell, but. And then the map booklets themselves, and those are from $30 to $35. And that is just to bring things more in line with costs. So administration is looking for council to, pardon me, I'm on the wrong one, to pass the amended bylaw, the schedule of fees.
Thank you, Jen. I'd open up to council. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on, within the proposed schedule A3F, there's a red line there. It looks like there was a change. Was there any change to that line, or is that just
I'm gonna guess that was a formatting. Probably it just picked it up as, yeah.
Okay, all right, perfect. On that note then, I would like to move, as soon as I get back to it, that bylaw 24-006, schedule of fees be read the first time.
Thank you, John. Is there any more questions? Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question. What did you say the land rentals were going to? I couldn't find it in here.
Oh, sorry. So that is under section, I guess it would be page 46, Councillor Hickey. Under number 19, the lease of farmland. So the pasture is $20 per acre per year, and cultivated is $40 per acre per year, where previously it was the minimum annual lease per acre was $15. So there's been a separation from pasture to cultivated.
And what page did you say that was on?
It looks like it's on page 46 of this.
Page 5 in the,
Oh,
if you're scrolling
yeah.
down, it's page 5 in your iCompass.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, I see it now.
Okay. Sorry.
Any other discussion? Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Why do we have an application fee for land leases?
Why do we have an application fee for land leases?
Yes.
For road allowance leases?
Yes.
Because we have to review to see if we can actually allow for the lease to occur. So it's a review process. So we have an application process for that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So then, you don't have to have an application fee to rent land? It's just for the road leases?
Yeah, so road allowance, the undeveloped road right-of-ways, that's the road the road licensing program, where
Okay.
somebody can license the road right-of-way that's adjacent to their existing land. For the farm leasing, typically we go through a process of advertising for that land. We don't have application forms for that because we have to go through an open tendering process. So this just sets the bar in terms of saying these are the base rates for that particular if we were to put a piece of land up for lease, like we have in north of Turin, we can put that up for lease, but this would allow for us to say the base lease rate is $20 per acre, or the best offer that comes in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just looking at the farmland, the cultivated land at $40 an acre. That is the most reasonable rate I think I've ever heard for the last 20 years.
Probably.
Like, it's too low.
Go ahead, Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hillary and I have had extensive conversations over this. This is over double what we have been charging historically. We've specifically not renewed some leases on some land that we need to just do a review of what our holdings are, where we need to be investing, what the county should hold from economic development and overall strategy. We didn't want to delay this schedule of fees trying to determine a lease rate or a calculation methodology was really difficult. We really struggled to find something that we would be able to stand by, whether it was taking the market value of the land and what that looks like. A lot of our land that we lease is adjacent to lagoons, and so there was that factor, and so we didn't have an opportunity to separate some of those components to say, what is the impact of cultivated land that has to be able to spread effluent onto it? What are the limitations? What does that go for versus if we have cultivated land that's a general holding or a quarter section somewhere? And so we know that we need to do more work on this. I know that's not a very good answer to say. We just weren't able to come up with some type of objective formula to determine what those rates were. So we were just trying to bring them up to at least cover some of our costs and carrying costs and expenses. We don't have a lot of cultivated land that we're leasing right now. Like this isn't, so when we talked about it and we were going through the review, Hillary and I essentially came to the conclusion that because we have so limited holdings, let's get the schedule of fees through, put it on a list of things to prioritize and try and come up with something more robust to bring to council. But it wasn't going to have a significant impact on the actual revenue generation because we just don't have that many acres that we lease right now.
Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it is reasonable, but you've got to think some of these are plenty of them are dry corners, odd shapes, small pieces. We start raising the price, they're not making money on dry land currently anyway. We want somebody to care for them just as much as, yeah, revenue is good, but on a small piece, let's make sure that they're actually getting cared for and that they don't turn into a weed mess and that now they become our liability. So, yeah, it's low, but hopefully then there's a little give and take and they take care of it as well.
Any other discussion? So, John moved the recommendation that bylaw 24-006 schedule of fees be read for a first time. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the bylaw 24-006 schedule of fees be read a second time.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved that bylaw 24-006 schedule of fees be read for a second time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Consideration of third reading. Who would like to move that? Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that council consider reading bylaw 24-006 schedule of fees a third time.
Thank you, Eric. Eric has moved that council consider reading bylaw 24-006 schedule of fees for a third time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? You were in favor, right? Okay, thank you.
I'm on the next.
Okay, that's carried. You're just so fast. Okay, so that was unanimous, so we can move to third reading. Clause.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will move that bylaw 24-006 schedule of fees be read a third time.
Thank you, Clause. Clause to move that bylaw 24-006 schedule of fees be read for a third time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. With that, we do have a 10 o'clock, so why don't we take a short 5-minute recess and we will reconvene for our 10 o'clock delegation. Thank you. call our meeting back to order this morning at 10:05 a.m. And we move in our agenda to item E, delegations. We have our 10 a.m. delegation. We have MLA Grant Hunter here this morning. So without further ado, good morning, Grant. Welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning.
It's my pleasure, Mr. Reeve. I have wanted to come out and meet with the councils in the riding for, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it every year, but my goal is to do it as many times as possible. So I wanted to just chat with you about kind of what's going on with Highway 3 twinning, with the agri-food processing corridor, with some of the broader things. I wanted you to give me some feedback on what you're hearing on some of those issues, but also to let you ask me some questions on direction of government and what you feel is working and what isn't working. And so I've always believed that those people who are closest to the electorate will have it right and get it right more than those who are further apart, further away, from province and from the federal government. So you guys will hear a whole lot more than I will in terms of what's going on in the trenches. So first of all, Highway 3 twinning between Traber and Butte, it's going to have shovels in the ground this spring. We're excited about that. This has been a long time in coming. Any work on Highway 3 is a good thing, and so we're quite excited about that. I have been told by some farmers in that area that they are now seeing equipment being moved and stationed or staged over there, and so that's a good sign. In terms of when they can get into the ground, as you know, the RFP has been awarded, and so there will be companies moving dirt here this spring. So in terms of the functional studies that are being done for the other parts, that is well underway. I talked to Darren Davidson the other day. He has assured me that they are being moved very quickly to try to be able to make sure that we have all the information we need in order to be able to twin from province to province. And again, that's a really expensive project. As you know, it'd be well over I think well over $2 billion when it's all said and done. So I'm excited about that. I know that if you talk to Bill Chapman, who's been on the Highway 3 Twinning Association, chair of that association, he has been trying to push this for a long, long time. And so for us to be able to kind of get to this point, I'm excited, and I think that we will see that done within the time frame that the Premier has established, which is about a 10-year build out. In terms of the agri-food processing corridor, had a great opportunity to meet with some ministers and try to be able to kind of flesh out how they are going to be able to kind of support this corridor. So I think there's 12 communities within this corridor that are kind of have to work together. They're excited for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're excited because 12 communities are actually working together. That's something that they say, you don't really see that in some other areas. They're kind of squabbling about this and squabbling about that. So I would just encourage you as a council to make sure that you recognize that there is a value to that collaboration and working together with other communities and creating this corridor. Because you will know that when it comes to budgets, everybody is looking for grabbing that money, and it's always a restricted amount. So anytime that we can actually show the correlation and coordination of efforts in terms of an economic corridor like we're doing, that actually plays higher in terms of priority for getting that money. And so that's why every time I go out to these council meetings, I remind those people on that corridor, please remember that we are in competition for that envelope of money with other jurisdictions that are trying to get it. So as we put forward a strong value proposition as a regional economic corridor, we have the ability to get some of these grants and this money. As you are aware, we have the goal is to be able to make between Lethbridge and Medicine Hat on that Highway 3 corridor what's called a DIZ, or a designated industrial zone. And a designated industrial zone, they did this over in east of Edmonton in the industrial heartland. And so there was a large swath of area that they came together and they said, hey, let's work together. Let's be able to standardize, our processes, our, how we approach water, electricity, wastewater, permitting, air quality, all that sort of stuff. They coordinated all that, and so that it became standardized for that whole area. And that's what's called a designated industrial zone. We are working with the Ministry of Environment and Protected Areas and a couple other ministries to try to be able to do the same sort of thing down here. Now, obviously, it wouldn't be an industrial zone. It would be a designated agri-food processing zone. So it would follow the same kind of structure, which is going to be helpful for when our companies come in, because the companies that want to come, the greenfield companies, and the ones that are there now, like the McCains and so forth, when they want to do the expansion, there will be a standardized process that will help them to be able to do it quicker. And it's still got the rigorous approach for environment and water and wastewater and sort of thing, but it's all been standardized in terms of, so they know it takes a lot less time. So the businesses that I've talked to are quite excited about this, and especially the ones that are looking for greenfield projects. They're really excited about that, because as you know, these companies can go anywhere. They can put their agri-food processing companies in any jurisdiction. Capital is fluid, and so we're hopeful that this will allow us to be as competitive as possible. That's just one of the parts that makes us very competitive in this region. The other part that makes us very competitive in the region is this agri-food processing tax credit. And McCain's will be taking advantage of that. We're hoping that Cavendish will be able to take advantage of that as well. Lamb Weston, if they do the expansion that we're hoping they will, can take advantage of it. And then any of the other companies that are interested in expanding. You have to have an investment of $10 million, a minimum of $10 million. And then you get, basically it's an accelerated capital write-down. That's exactly what it is. And it's worked very, very well down in the States. They did that down in the States and jump-started their economy down there. So we're going to do the same sort of thing up here. Well, I shouldn't say we're going to. We are doing the same sort of thing here. I think that the first company that will take advantage of that, there'll be an announcement, I think, in the next couple of days. So stay tuned. You'll see that in the news. And so companies are already starting to take advantage of that. On the provincial side, we have been busy. We are in the budget deliberation stages right now. So Treasury Board and Finance is going through budget deliberations. We've gone through, I guess, the operational budget deliberations, and now we're moving in, and we're just about finished up the capital budget deliberations as well. So I can't say much more on that because, again, they're just deliberations, and there are lots of moving parts there. But if you do have some thoughts on, some late submissions or anything like that, not easy to do, by the way, but if you did have some thoughts on late submissions for capital, I don't think you could do it in terms of the operational, but capital ideas, there may be still some time to be able to get those in. With that, I've taken up my time, I'm sure, and plenty more, and so I'll turn the time over to you guys for asking questions if you have any for me.
Thank you very much, Grant. I open up to the council for any questions you have with MLA Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the question I had on the Highway 320, and that is, I heard some rumbling there, and especially in the pass area there, Frank Slide and so forth, and going right through that. That's going to be a really expensive operation there. What do you think of the, well, and a lot of people are looking like there's so many people opposed there already living in the direct area, and they probably don't realize the benefit that we're going to get with that. But I mean, it's, have you heard anything that way that you know, they need a little more explanation or whatever, what's going on and how beneficial it is?
Well, look, when it's, I think we certainly saw with the flooding over in BC, the necessity of having, you know, another corridor going west. And so BC is now very much studying twinning that Highway 3 through BC as well. So, yeah, it's a very expensive ordeal to do any kind of transportation corridors through mountains and, you know, through BC. It's extremely expensive. But at the end of the day, what is the cost to not being able to get, you know, through Banff and going west? I mean, there was a major cost. And so everybody was coming down through Highway 3 during those floods. So we recognize, you know, as provinces grow up and get bigger and, you know, economics increase, that you need to have that. So, I mean, we're not even talking just about having the Highway 3. I mean, they're talking about even further north, being able to finding something that we can go west as well. They recognize that those corridors are absolutely critical in a sophisticated environment and economy like ours. So yes, there's going to be some grumbling. There always is when you're trying to build something. But I can promise you this, Klaus, that the naysayers never built anything in this world.
Thanks. I very much appreciate you coming and chatting with us, Grant. It's always nice to see you and talk to you about it. My question is sort of revolved around Highway 3 as well. When the announcement first came in for the Traber to Burdett, there was some talk about a 10-year timeline. Is that still in the cards, or has there been any discussion on when the anticipated completion of that is?
Well, the 10 years to build out all of the Highway 3 between the provinces. So that's from BC all the way to Saskatchewan. You know, we're going to move heaven and earth to try to make that happen. That is now on budgets. So, you know, when in terms of being able to say, you know, how likely is that going to be to happen? Well, first of all, the Premier said it. And yes, Premiers can change. So in a 10-year period, maybe the Premiers will change. But the nice thing about what we have going for us right now, John, is that it's in budgets, so they're already doing those, you know, those functional studies, and so you have to get all that work done first, and then you know, once you get shovels in the ground, you know, there's no turning back. So, are we on track for the 10 years? Yes, we are. We are. So, I mean, I guess that's the best way to explain that right now, is we are on track for being able to get that done in a 10-year period.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in this morning, Grant. Just a couple of things that come to my mind. We talked, and that was the, if you want to call it, the capital regional board type system that is around Edmonton, and you were talking about how they had gotten together to get electrical and water and everything like that. So do you see this area falling into that same kind of structure as or just this will be totally separate? Then?
Yeah. No, we don't have the same problems down here, which is kind of neat. Calgary, Edmonton doesn't play it as much as Calgary does, but Calgary plays it on a regular basis, where they kind of use their veto power of water to hold the region kind of, you know, they're the puppet master sort of thing. You know, if you don't play by their rules, then they don't give you the water. And there's been lots of, and you guys have talked with these counties outside of Calgary there that are just beyond angry because these guys use this veto power of water on a regular basis. They just tell the companies, well, look, yes, so the company will come and they'll say, hey, we want to set up in Calgary, and then Calgary will come up with all of these, red tape and all this nonsense, and the cost is prohibitive. And so the companies go out to the counties, and the counties say, hey, we'd love to have you out here. And so, this is what we'll do. And then when they go to do it, Calgary just says, no, we're not going to give you the water. And so then they can't do it out in the counties. And so most of the time we lose those companies. They don't actually go to Calgary. Calgary thinks, well, if we play hardball, then they'll come into Calgary rather than going out in these counties. Doesn't happen. They go to other places. Because remember, capital is very fluid. These guys, if they're that big, they usually can go anywhere. And so, we've talked extensively about this as an issue. That's a provincial issue. Now, down here, we don't have the same issue because irrigation boards actually have the ability to provide water as well for industrial issues, industrial projects and stuff, and often have. So we have it a little better down here in terms of, there's no one region or no one city or place that is going to be able to have that kind of veto power over their neighbors. And yes, you guys, I know that Lethbridge, County of Lethbridge gets their water and, lots of their stuff from Lethbridge, and you guys have a good working relationship with them, which is great. You should. But that is not the same. We don't have the same problem down here.
And then just you sort of touched a little bit about it. There's been a little bit of talk lately about water allocation and, licenses that are people who need more water and how they're gonna, see who can fill whose requirements. And then there was some talk also about transfer of water from other water basins. Is there any more word on that?
Well, I'll take your second question first, or answer that first. In order to be able to transfer between water basins, you do need to have executive council make that decision. And so it's not an easy process. You can do it. But when we are looking at potential drought, and we're not there yet, just so you know, but when we are looking at some serious issues with water, all things will be on the table. And it's not, they say, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over. Well, we don't want to have fighting over water. We want to be able to make sure that we work together collaboratively and figure it out. So you will see in coming days and weeks and months, as if we don't get the precipitation that we need in the mountains and here, by March you will see what we can do. And I think that there's already some really good conversations. We're striking some committees and councils on being able to talk about what can be done, collaboratively together and people making the decisions together. So there's the first one. In terms of the water allocations, I have always said, my goal is to be able to increase water storage. 4 years ago, when I pitched it to Treasury Board, it was to increase water storage. Yes, water storage can then be used for extra irrigation acres, and you've heard about that. I've talked about that. I've shouted it from the housetops that we want to increase irrigation land by, we're actually up to over 300,000 irrigated acres that we could expand. That has not been allocated out yet, and each year, each district will make a decision about what they're going to allocate out, depending upon what they feel is what we'll have storage for and what we have the ability to do. So we are leaving that in the hands of the irrigation districts to be able to make that determination. But when it comes to adding storage, yes, they are going to be building it, but we're the ones who put the money in, CIB put the money in, and then the ratepayers, the irrigators also put the money in as well. So no matter what happens, Lauren, at the end of the day, it's a good thing that we're building more storage, because last year we're supposed to have 50% go to Saskatchewan. Last year, 58% went to Saskatchewan. And had we been able to capture it when we needed to, we would have just sent 50% to Saskatchewan. That 8% could have been really helpful this year. So my argument is, for those people who are saying, hey, what are we doing adding more irrigation land? I just say to them, look, what we're doing right now is we're building more storage capacity. Chin's going to be expanded. Dead Horse is going to be expanded. We've got the Malloy drainage that's going to add storage. So all of that is good as a kind of an insurance to droughts and, difficult dry spells. We used up our insurance last year, right? But it worked, right? I mean, most of the irrigating farmers that I talked to said they had bumper years. And so it worked. Now we just got to make sure we fill it up. So if you're praying, people, pray.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the Highway 3 twinning announcements and that, what role do you see in municipalities staying on as advocates to promote it, or has the government got it well handled and we can get out of their way?
I still think there's a role that municipalities play. But yeah, we're at a stage that we haven't seen in decades, so, which is a good place to be in. But yeah, I still think you guys, the association still plays a role in coordinating and disseminating of information. When you're building this thing, I just had a conversation this morning with a farmer that was concerned about an egress, on the highway, and didn't think it was the right egress. And so, all those sorts of things, we'll have to kind of work through all those details now. But, and there'll be some people that'll be angry that it didn't go around, it went around their community, or it didn't go wherever they thought it should have gone. And so, again, that's, you're gonna find that. But I remind these guys, we're just glad we're here, and it may not be perfect, but let's not stop progress because we couldn't get perfect. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for answering. Sure appreciate you taking the time, and it's nice to get caught up. I just maybe had a couple of things that I'd maybe put out there. I know you mentioned around that collaboration piece, and I just want to reaffirm to you that that's obviously something that's really important to this group, to this council. We're firm believers that the rising tide will lift all boats. So when we talk about this corridor and what the potential is, I think that, to your point, we acknowledge that maybe if it doesn't land in the city of Lethbridge, Lethbridge County, town of Coldell, if we're attracting to this region, to southern Alberta, I think we have to look at it as a win for everyone. Sure. And I do think that we support that. And I know you noted it. Obviously, we are very closely tied with the city of Lethbridge around water. And, I think it would be remiss if, when you're talking about that funding piece and where funds need to go, the city of Lethbridge is in need of some, significant upgrades that already feed this region and do strengthen what happens between Coldell, some of the smaller urbans to the north. And it's, critical to the industry that's here already. So I would, just make sure that we're keeping in mind, while I think there's opportunity down the road, and I'm very interested to see where these ACP grants around water and wastewater lead us. We do fully support the city and want to be good partners with them and see their facilities upgraded to continue serving the region. And I think maybe in that same discussion, you kind of mentioned around some of the struggles that Calgary has had and Edmonton has had around, accusations of gatekeeping, and we hear it all the time at mayors and reeves. It's a real struggle. But I would also say that it's easy maybe to cast the blame on some of those big urbans, and I think we can all and we all have been guilty of, gatekeeping in one way, shape, or form. So I think as we look at this region, and what can happen through that corridor, I think it's maybe not just the anchors on either end, it's everyone throughout that I think we have to acknowledge that and realize that we have to work collaboratively and maybe let our guard down a little bit. So I'm appreciative of the message, and I think there's some real opportunity there. And then just on a final note around that funding piece, again, something that I know you're very aware of is that Horsefly Regional Emergency Spillway. We were down there on Friday for a meeting. There is a significant funding shortfall there in excess of $4 million. So I know advocacy is ongoing with the province, but anytime you're able, I know you've been a big supporter of that project, and you're a part of the reason why we've made the progress we have. So just to acknowledge your role in that, thank you for that. But then also just re-up again, we would love to get those first 3 phases across the finish line. We think that's critical not only to the municipalities, but also just to protect that investment that's here, those $300,000 or 300,000 acres. If that main canal were to be breached, the value that brings to the region, the consequences. Advocate for that as well.
Yeah, you make some very good points, Mr. Reeve, and that is been always my advocacy is we need to make sure that we get that, we need to harden that, the infrastructure we have here and make sure that it's protected. We certainly produce more, an oversized amount based on our size, and then that's because of that irrigation. And I take my hat off to, to those dreamers in the past, our forefathers and foremothers that actually thought of these ideas and actually made it happen. I mean, for goodness sakes, if you take a look at what we have here versus what they have in Montana, we were dreamers up here. And we've had, like when Simplot came up here, I mean, their jaw dropped at how amazing of infrastructure we have here for conveyance of water. So I believe that the government gets that, but contrary to, what maybe you see in the news, there is always, everybody's looking for the money, right? I mean, they say we've got a $5.5 billion surplus, but the reality is that money is already spoken for by 30 other groups and, the doctors and everybody else that want to have that money. So we, in terms of being able to kind of build out and make sure that we have enough for that drainage to work, yes, we got an extra 10 million, which was hard fought for. But remember, prior to that, we got, a lot of money, and they were like, you guys had enough, If you didn't procure it, you guys didn't think about what the cost was going to be for inflation. That's up to you guys. So that's kind of what I'm fighting against right now. And Nathan Newdorf, by the way, he's the chair or the deputy chair of Treasury Board. And so he has a whole lot more say than I do on that issue, and I know that he's fighting really hard to make sure that we can try to get that extra money. If he can make it happen, then all kudos to him, and make sure you give him a big high five, because he is, if it happens, if you're able to get that extra money, it will be because of the work that he's been able to do on that file. Because I'm not on Treasury Board anymore, and so I don't even have the same kind of conversations that those guys do. So I cross my fingers. I'm hopeful that it isn't dead yet, that that we're gonna be able to try to get that extra 4 million, but that will be Nathan and his ability to sweet talk everybody in Treasury Board on that.
Awesome. Anything else from council? Thank you very much, Grant. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Good to be here, guys. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Happy New Year to you as well. Even though it's February 1st, I guess it is. Right?
Why don't we move in our agendas now to item F2.4, Farming Smarter 4-H silent auction donation request. Jen?
Thank you. I'm just going to bring it up here, Mr. Chairman. So we had another donation request come forward from the Farming Smarter with regards to their 4-H silent auction. So the Farming Smarter is a registered charity, Canadian charity that focuses on agricultural research and within the southern, to help southern Alberta crop producers with their making decisions and around inputs and technology and management practices. One of their signature events is a 2-day annual conference held in Lethbridge, where they bring in knowledgeable speakers to provide valuable information to members, and they host a trade show that allows them to showcase businesses and network with other top producers in the area. This event is going to be taking place on February 14th and 15th, and the conference and trade show will be hosted at the Sandman Signature Lethbridge Lodge. Over the past 4 years, the funds raised at the auction have helped produce successful programs for 4-H members between the ages of 19 and 20 across southern Alberta, including judging project events, and they're asking for a donation to go towards this. So the recommendation based on the policy, again, referring to that section of eligibility, which speaks to an event taking place within the county boundaries, that is held for the enjoyment and benefit of the general public, as well as an event that is hosted on an annual basis, recognizing a milestone and or event. So with that, the recommendation is that County Council provide a donation to the Farming Smarter 4-H silent auction in the amount of $500 per policy number 161. They did mention in their letter as well that any donors will be recognized at their event. So if the council was to make a donation, they would be recognized at the event.
Thank you, Jen. I would open up to council for any questions or discussion you might have. Class, go ahead.
I'm kind of happy that they probably know our policy 161, that they came up with that amount, and I think that kind of makes them, that they know what's going on in the county and everything like that. So, and I think it's going to be a good event. So I think I would want to make the recommendation that the county council provide a donation to the Farming Smarter 4-H silent auction event in the amount of $500 as per policy number 161.
Thank you, Claus. Is there any discussion? Claus has moved the recommendation the county council provide a donation to the Farming Smarter 4-H silent auction in the amount of $500 as per policy 161. There's no further discussion. Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Move down to operations, F3. F3.1, Bylaw 24-001, the 2024 Utility Rate Bylaw. And we have our Director of Operations, Jeremy Wixon. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Council. Thank you. So today I'm here to present the follow-up into the Schedule of Fees bylaws, basically to discuss the utility rate bylaw. So through the annual budget process, utility rates are reviewed and adjusted to reflect any anticipated increases for the upcoming year and to ensure that we have adequate cost recovery of and that operations is maintained and that we have money for asset management as well. Any increases that have been determined by administration are included within the budget and are presented to council during budget deliberations for implementation in the coming year. So when we went through the budget process, the numbers that are contained within these rate increases were essentially contained within that budget process. I mean, obviously we cannot predict, especially with a potential drought and water restrictions this year, we can't predict essentially what annual water usage is year to year, but we're basically basing a lot of our forecasting for revenue based on best 3-year averages or 5-year averages essentially, so that we've got a good level playing field for essentially what normal usage actually is. When we do look at utility rates, the county follows any increases considered by the city of Lethbridge as well, as they are the main source of all of our water that is provided to the countryside. The only area that we have that is not serviced directly in some way, shape, or form by the city of Lethbridge is Mountain Meadow Subdivision, which is based off a water aquifer. So the city set a target for 2% for utility rate increases for 2024. This was expressed to us back in the late fall, and that is what we base some of our increases around as well. The increases that have been applied within the bylaw for county water rates are related to operational cost increases as well as asset management forecasts that we have been taking a closer look at recently. So when I review the asset replacement requirements, this has become a bit of a flag for how much we've actually been putting away for future reserve costs to replace our water and wastewater infrastructure. So that is in conjunction, we look at numerous factors. I mean, there's the tangible capital asset policy, of course, but then we're also looking at index costs of the cost of infrastructure. The McCain's pipeline has given us a good idea of what larger pipelines will cost and what those kind of incurred costs would be for some of those larger assets that we would have. So the utility rate bylaw has been amended as attached for council review and approval to align with the budget. Now I will have just go over some highlights here coming up within the background information. Just a note on this, the current proposed rates take into consideration normal annual water operating parameters, as I kind of expressed. I do not know what kind of revenue effect this may potentially have if we do have to introduce water restrictions. Based on what we have essentially for the residential population that we support through our hamlets, I don't see it as a very significant change, but there will be some potential revenue loss essentially with that, but I cannot account for what that potentially might be at this point. And water usage obviously only goes up for 3 to 4 months of the year through our area. So some of the background part, has everybody had a chance to, do you want me to pull this up here so everybody can see portions of this? So in 2023, the utility rate bylaw schedule was passed, which encompasses the majority of water, wastewater, and solid waste services. That is a portion here that also includes the solid waste services that we provide to some of our hamlets. Schedule B within this utility rate bylaw is specific to the RAVE subdivision and is a stormwater improvement levy. The utility rates are, as I've said, reviewed annually as part of the budget process, and then we present best case scenarios for what we see as far as rate increases across the board. So some notes to the proposed changes for 2024. There is a range of increases that are in coordination with the budget. For water rates specifically, the impact on a residential property, which is the majority of our hamlets, on the user rate, base rate for water is $376 per month or $45.12 per year. Consumption usage for the average household, we forecast that at 30 cubic meters. That takes into account summer water uses and an average family household. With those increases being in the range of 8 cents per cube, this will have an effect of $240 per month or $28.80 per year on a typical bill. Wastewater rates, the impact on a residential property on the user base rate for wastewater is going to be $276 or $33.12 per year. So combined between all these rate increases, you are looking at the average household probably having anywhere on the lower end as much as $78 per year increase, and then on the top end is going to be based on water usage. So like I said, I can't necessarily predict what that would be, but you're looking at an average increase across the board for all utility usage for water and wastewater for a residential property to be roughly about $100 plus per year. The water charge for commercial users has a capital replacement surcharge, specifically the one for the 8-inch or larger line, and we have been looking at that and analyzing those numbers, and we've put a significant rate increase in that. That also does go in conjunction with the water commissions. The Iron Springs Water Association is charged a monthly flat fee. We brought this in last year, and that's looked to be increased to $1,100 per month. They originally, and I just got this information the other day, originally they had provided me information that they had 26 residences, 2 commercial operations, and a school. Now that's changed. They've got 39 or 37 residences, 1 commercial, 1 school. So there has been a change in the number of users for that portion. Colehurst provides us with, we have an existing contract with them for residential garbage pickup for hamlets and rural subdivisions, and I propose an increase of 65 cents per month or $7.80 per year for that contract cost. So all these increases reflect the annual increases we have for operations, as well as city operation costs, and as well as what we're looking at for asset management recovery to further build our reserves for utility infrastructure. So I will open the floor for questions. And
Awesome.
yep.
Thanks, Jeremy. I've got Eric and John. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How much did the Iron Springs flat fee go up?
$100.
Okay, and what was that based on?
That is based on what our operating costs are per year, essentially for operating that section. Last year, when I did a 3-year average, it was roughly in the range of $12,000, and with our increases to our QP rates and whatnot, then I've estimated that to be a little bit higher, essentially, for this year.
Okay, so that increase is not based on additional residents, it's cost increase? What's the increase on?
This is based on cost increase. So across the board for the majority of residential rates, so if you can see within our other Hamlet residential rates, all those rates have been increased by anywhere in a range from 5 to 10%, depending on which service it potentially is. And that was the same kind of increase I looked at for Iron Springs. Because they, essentially, when I looked at Iron Springs originally, I looked at a base rate of what they would be charged in comparison to other hamlets. Even though we don't own the infrastructure for the Iron Springs Water Co-op or our water association, we still provide all of the exact same services that we do to other residential property. Now, based on that average from last year, it was based on the 26 residences, and roughly it was about a flat rate per customer. Now, obviously, now that I have new information with new residential, I'm going to have to take a little bit closer look at what that portion is as far as that is concerned. But based on what I've looked at from what our actual operating cost for that is, that's what I base the initial base rate off of.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I kind of want to start this conversation with the appreciation that nobody likes to see costs go up, and you know, it's and recognizing and understanding that our ratepayers sometimes look at this as an additional tax, but I really wanted to call to attention that our administration, you guys have done everything in your power to try to keep these reasonable. And you know, when we're looking at increases of the rates of, you know, under $5, which is less than an average cup of coffee at Tim Hortons or Starbucks these days, you know, when we're talking about that on a per monthly basis, I want to recognize the administration's efforts to try to keep these as reasonable as possible, but also understanding that there's an increased cost of doing business. There's going to be an increased cost of water, and you know, if we move into multiple years of water shortages, which potentially may be forthcoming, the cost of water is going to be a pretty significant issue moving forward. So that's my only comment, and I would like to also move that bylaw 24-001 the 2024 utility rates be read a first time.
Thank you, John. Is there any further discussion? Claus and then Warren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would not like to use that Tim Hortons $5 cup of coffee because I never go there. But you know, it's an increase, and so how does this affect the North and South Co-op? Because we also work with them to like with the metering and so forth. So is that but the North and South Co-op, they still determine themselves what the raise is going to be for the unit price, right?
No, for that portion. So essentially right now with the North and the South Co-op, we have memorandums of understanding we provide service to all of their infrastructure essentially right now. And then we charge a cost per cube essentially based on whatever their water usage is. And the same cost per cube has essentially been applied. There's been an 8-cent per cube charge applied to residential rates. That same 8 cents has been applied to both the North Co-op water usage rate and the South Co-op usage rate.
Good Lord.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on meters. we require everyone to have a meter in a hamlet or
Every
Correct.
residential property has one, yes.
so I'm guessing, I'm not quite sure why we have a meter test charge. Like, if we're requesting that they have a meter, why are we, if they are questioning whether it's accurate or not accurate, why are we charging them then if we require them to have one?
We've ran into tampering in the past, so people that tamper with meters, we have flagged all kinds of pieces as far as inaccuracies as far as meters, so there is a portion where we have to go in and maintain that infrastructure. I mean, the idea is, I mean, if a user uses water, you know, if I see a residential property that uses 5 cubes of water, that's outside of the norm, so then there is potential that we have to go in there and either sometimes replace meters or potentially test them essentially for their accuracy as well as that. So we are doing, my utilities department right now is actually doing a larger, we work with all of our meters currently, right now we buy through AccuFlow. We are doing a larger full-scale review of essentially all of our meter usage because there's some new technology coming through, and some of the meters that we do have residential property will be becoming obsolete in the next 5 to 10 years. So we will be doing some transition pieces on that as well. But the majority of any of the testing charges, lots of these rates are based off of, I'm trying to keep it in line with essentially what our other municipal partners are doing. These cost charges essentially reflect what either the city of Lethbridge has included in their utility rate fees, as well as the town of Coaldale. And we are fairly equal in what we pay our staffing levels.
Good, John.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. In terms of the meter test charge, if a meter actually failed and stopped operation and you had to go in and replace it due to old age or just a warranty failure or whatever, would we be charging the residents for that?
For that is something that we're gonna have to take a look at. I mean, typically, if we've got a new residential property and somebody needs water meter, then they are charged that cost accordingly. When these were originally installed, I can't say whether or not the county fronted all of that cost, essentially what those meter charges were. I imagine we did, because it was essentially something where we were tracking water usage.
Go ahead.
Thanks, but that wasn't my question. My question is, if a meter fails that is already installed and we have to go in and replace it, are we charging the homeowner to go in and replace a failed meter?
Like I said, the new residential properties, we would. For existing ones, when we go through this process of going through all these other meters that are gonna need to be replaced, that is gonna be something that we're gonna have to take a look at. As far as failed meters currently, I can't say specifically if we have charged those in the past or if we have just replaced them.
Any other questions? If not, I do have a motion. It's been moved that bylaw 24-001, the 2024 utility rates, be read a first time. Is there any further discussion? I will call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Claus?
I will move that bylaw 24-001-2024 utility rate be read for a second time.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved that the bylaw 24-001, the 2024 utility rates be read a second time. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Consideration. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd move the council consider third reading of bylaw 24-001-2024 utility rates.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved that county council consider third reading of bylaw 24-001, 2024 utility rates. Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. We'll go to third reading. John?
Guess I'll do the heavy lifting. I'd like to move the bylaw 24-001, the 2024 utility rates be read a third time.
Thank you, John. John has moved that bylaw 24-001, 2024 utility rates be read a third time. Any discussion? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you. Well, I guess I'd like to see a little more clarity around this meter thing, but, because Not sure it's very clear. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just from my recollection of what we do for billing and invoicing, not often do we charge to replace an existing meter, or haven't historically. There was an exception one time with a large industrial where it's a bigger meter, and the cost is extensive. And I actually believe in this one case they had mucked with the meter a little bit, which was why it needed to be replaced. All new builds, though, are charged for a meter, or if I think the customer was the one who caused damages, likely we would charge in that case. But generally speaking, if we had a mass replacement or we were installing new meters because we, were changing programs or something, we would have to look at that. But from my recollection, historically, no, we're not charging to replace a damaged or existing meter. Or sorry, damaged or not working.
Thank you, Jen.
So, as I understand it, then the only reason that a user would be charged for replacement of a meter in the past is because they've tampered with it. If it just broke down because of something internally, it wore out, then they wouldn't be charged.
That's how we've been doing it for the most part. I'm not seeing a lot of those costs come through, so I am making a little bit of an assumption just based on what I've seen come through. Utilities Department or Operations may be changing that practice moving forward. I'm not sure if Jeremy wants to speak to that, but yes, that is what I've seen.
It's a detail I will review. I don't see the invoicing essentially for if somebody does get charged for it, even for the residential properties. I mean, I know for residential properties, we typically charge for that, but I don't actually physically sign what the cost is.
Go ahead, Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just recommend that from an administration standpoint, we're going to go back and clarify because, so we have some clear documentation that reflects when and how we will charge, because my recommendation would be that we do not charge for a failed meter that is defective or related to just the mechanics of that and it hasn't been tampered with or damaged in any way. So that maybe I'm making an assumption, but that's my assessment of council's position on this as well. So I think we just need to document that more clearly as to what would qualify for that charge. I don't believe that we need to do that as part of this bylaw, because we can just say, here's how this gets applied for the charge separately through our standard operating procedures. So we can bring that back with some documentation to present to council at a future meeting if that's the preference, or that would be my recommendation.
Well, what do you think?
I think that's fair. I have no objection to voting on it today if you're going to make those changes, as long as it's clear, because right now when I read it, I don't find it to be that clear. So, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So then we have, it's been moved that bylaw 24-001, 2024 utility rates be read for a third time. John made that motion. There's no further discussion. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Moving down, F4 administration. F4.1, Town of Pitcher Butte Health Professional Recruitment and Retention Committee. Cool.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Town of Pitcher Butte has requested or invited a member of council to participate in their Health Professional Recruitment and Retention Committee. So the overall intent is to provide support with the Town of Pitcher Butte and surrounding area in recruiting and retaining medical service providers who will also serve to support county residents. There's more information in there, but as we all know, there's a significant physician shortage worldwide, specifically in the region, a lack of general practitioners and support, and that has been exacerbated not only by COVID, but also retirements and closures of other facilities. So they would like, if Region Council would consider and appoint in this meeting a representative to sit on, as a standing representative to sit on that committee.
Thank you, Cole. I would open up to council. Quitter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. How many of these boards do we need to sit on? how many are we currently on, I guess is the first question, and what's our recommendation? Everyone that pops up we should be on, or how do we do this?
Thank you, Councillor Van Essen, through the chair. I think this is a conversation that we have every year at the organizational meeting, and this will flow into that. I would have to ask Candace to pull up the number of committees. There is a number of them. Excuse me. But I do think that this is a regional issue. In the small urbans, I think our role for advocacy is a little greater than it is in the urban setting, like with the city of Lethbridge. I know Reeve Campbell and I have had that conversation where there's been not a formal request for council representation, but a formal request for our support, where it's not entirely clear to me the role we play from an advocacy or how our financial contribution would be in the best interest of our ratepayers. From that perspective, I do think the small urbans serve the greatest proportion of our residents. And so my recommendation, and this would only be my recommendation, is that this because of the importance and the regional issue related to this, and some of the conversations that we've had in the past, as well as we've had with the ministers, that we appoint a member of council to sit on this board, evaluate the efficacy and the strategy of it, and then it can be reevaluated at the organizational meeting if it is not deemed to be productive. I don't want to speak to necessarily who that is. However, I would see some synergies between Councillor Hickey's standing on the Green Acres Foundation and some of the work that they've done with Pitcher Butte or proposed to do with Pitcher Butte, that there might be more alignment if Councillor Hickey was interested in sitting on that committee. And again, this is just my perspective. Council can do whatever they would like. That there may be more alignment to ensure that the strategies are not moving in different directions, or that there's not some disparity between what they're trying to accomplish in the region.
Cool. John?
Sorry.
I'm just gonna say this, maybe I'll run the meeting, okay? Okay.
My apologies.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yesterday at Green Acres meeting, we did have a brief discussion about this, and the one doctor, he's leaving right away in Pitcher Butte, and Dr. Leachman is only short term away from it.
Yeah.
And they are.
Mohammed, you mean?
That's it, yeah. And they are struggling to reach out to find somebody, and I believe he operates out of the Miami Lodge, does he?
Yeah.
So, yeah, they would like to see that position for somebody come in, but it's a struggle because Milk River is just a disaster when it comes to doctors, so it's really hard to get anybody. I think that Pitcher Butte has a better opportunity. They're a little closer to Lethbridge, and they can, so that's what it was yesterday anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so Candace was able to confirm we have 27 standing committees as well. And I just to add to Councillor Hickey's point, I think the adjacency to Lethbridge provides more opportunity from a service model, advocacy role with Alberta Health Services or private practice, so that I think that there are a lot of opportunities between the Green Acres Foundation and what Pitcher Butte is requesting.
Thank you, Cole. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see significant value for our ratepayers on this because there's the area around Pitcher Butte and north. We have that hospital and doctor area that services a sizable amount of our territory, and you know, having a voice on how that actually moves forward and progresses is something that I think is extraordinarily important to our residents on the north side of the river, because without that, that would put more pressure on the city, and certainly would put a lot more pressure on the residents having to come down into the city to take care of their medical needs.
Thank you, John. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's not committees in general I was referring to. I understand we're participating on a doctor recruitment one with the city. If I understand it right, no?
Jen, you wanna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we had partnered with the city of Lethbridge on some physician recruitment pieces. The funding for that ran out. Maddie and I were in on those meetings on a couple occasions, and it kind of dissolved as far as our participation in that at that time. So I'm not sure where the city is at with it, but I know that AHS, was continuing to work on recruitment on its own. I'd have to ask Maddie. I don't recall if we still have anything on our website. Yeah, so we do still have some information on our website, connection points, that also kind of guides people to where some of these recruitment pieces are, but we're not actively participating in anything right now.
Okay. Well, that adds some clarity, because I was thinking if we're recruiting or involved with the city, trying to recruit to there, and then we're trying to do with a small urban, we're actually splitting ourselves of, where are we putting our weight and what are we trying to do. So do I think it's needed? Absolutely. Is it an extremely competitive market to get them? For sure, and more than likely those who have the biggest weight are got the strongest advantage here. So I do not know where that puts us, other than that it's a very challenging role that needs to be filled.
Class?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do also agree that it is necessary that there's participation in there, but I'm not saying directly has to be from council. I do find that with Lauren being on Green Acres, that would be a benefit to work with them. But also, I would like to see more like to see somebody out of the community itself, out of the county community. And if somebody who's got some expertise in that and is willing to put a lot of effort and dedication into that, I think we shouldn't rule that one out either.
Thank you, Klaus. Any other comments, discussion from council? I'm hearing, I think there's some support. Whether that member is there, I guess I would ask, is there an appetite to pursue more of an at-large? Or I think the ask is for a councillor to, the town of Pitcher Butte is providing council representation. Is that correct, Cole?
That's correct, yes.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I'd agree. I think it's important that we supply, or one of our council sits on this committee, shows collaboration with one of our urban partners. It brings our, puts our support on the table, and I think it makes their case a little stronger having somebody from this council, from the county, on that board, or within this group that they've organized. And this is something that's an issue right across the province, and there needs to be something done. There needs to be some other strategy to pull doctors together. So I think this is an initiative they put together, and I think it's important, and I think it's imperative that we sit and be part of this.
Thank you, Mark. Lauren, your name has been thrown out there. Would you have any interest?
I will do it if nobody else wants to. No problem with it.
Okay. Is someone willing to make that motion appointing Lauren to that committee? Go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then I'll make that motion that we appoint Lauren to sit on that recruitment committee at Pitcher Butte.
Thank you, Klaus. Is there any further discussion on that? If not, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Thank you for stepping up, Lauren. Appreciate it. F4.2, Salvation Army Memorandum of Understanding. With that, Heath,
Yes.
welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
I don't have it.
So just to start, I'm just going to present about we think it's a great opportunity to partner with Salvation Army and support our local firefighters at the same time. So following a recent incident, fire long duration incident, it came to light that it created some barriers for rehab in a timely fashion for our firefighters. So with that, because we look at this as a life safety measure as well, to have support and rehab for our firefighters in a timely fashion. So presently, and with great respect and regard for the volunteers that the spouses actually came together and did the rehab prior. We saw an opportunity with Salvation Army to create a memorandum of understanding and provide some additional support. And so what we, bear with me here. So the situation presents an opportunity for rehabilitation support, not only physically and mentally, but also spiritually, to our contracted Lethbridge County Fire Departments during significant long-duration fire events. There is the financial impact. I know that you'd probably like to be interested. The Salvation Army does not charge a fee until 5 days of continuous response to an event, as you can refer that to the MOU itself. Historically, it is a low probability though, and it doesn't represent a standard for these response in these events all the time. Usually the guideline is a 2-hour window threshold before we actually would engage, and they would actually engage on further resources. This also presents the fact that the chances of once it goes to 5 days, the chances that we would actually activate a local or provincial state of emergency would probably be, the cost would end up being on that end of things. So having this relationship and the MOU in place strengthens our ability to support first responders in an emergency event and strengthens our emergency management plans looking forward, as we'd be looking for incurring those costs anyways. So with that, I know I went pretty quickly, but I would like to recommend that County Council approve the memorandum of understanding between Lethbridge County and Salvation Army as presented. Any questions?
Thank you, Heath. Go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question here. Have we talked to the volunteers that are supplying the food right now? Would we do them a disservice if we just took that away from them? Because I think some of them maybe are really dedicated and love doing that when there is something going on. And I think we should be very careful that we don't take that away without having them notified or asked them.
Absolutely, and I agree with you, Councillor Van der Veen. We have spoken to some of the volunteers, and it has been very welcomed, and for the extra support. And like I said, this would be only in major events, long-standing fire duration events, and it would just enhance the support.
Go ahead, John.
Asked and answered.
Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Looks like a great idea, great opportunity. If I'm just reading the contract, though, it says during a municipally declared state of emergency. Do we have to declare a state for them to activate this?
No. It's a 2-hour threshold, Councillor Van Essen. It is completely on the chief fire officer's decision at the time. I would be notified, definitely, just with the position I hold, but at the end of the day, it is the chief officer that's on scene, the incident command, that would call that after a 2-hour duration, and yeah. Okay.
Anything else? Go ahead, Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just add, and I mean, this is more of a plug for the work that Heath is doing, and how great this is to support our first responders. We know most of our departments are volunteer in nature. People dedicate a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of time away from their families. It's a significant strain on those families. We were also very fortunate to have Maddie, who is part of our team, that is heavily involved with the volunteering and supporting the firefighters out of the Pitcher Butte operation. And so this is just something that it's just such a great opportunity to show that Lethbridge County appreciates what our volunteers do, that we support them, and just a huge thank you to Heath for flagging this as a level of service that we can provide to show them that we care and to help them get through some of those more significant fire events. So that was, just a thank you to the team for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Cole. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the recommendation that County Council approve the memorandum of understanding between Lethbridge County and Salvation Army as presented.
Thank you, Eric. Eric has moved the recommendation that County Council approve the Memorandum of Understanding between Lethbridge County and Salvation Army as presented. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much, Heath.
Thank you.
And that was our Regional Manager of Safety and Emergency Services, Heath Wright. Thank you, Heath.
Thank you.
We can move down. F4.3, Letter of Support, City of Lethbridge, Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta Grant Application. Heath.
Yes, so that's myself as well. We were approached approximately a couple of weeks ago, and if we would be interested in supporting them, since it does integrate into the county, that they would like to have our support. So Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services has requested a letter of support for a grant application. I can personally say that I've actually been through this in my past. It is a great program. It's a great grant. It has really great life safety initiatives and opportunities for grant funding for wildfires. And we've had some experience with that, as we all know. So we've been asked also that myself, the Regional Manager of Emergency Services, to participate in the project committee to ensure adequate representation from Lethbridge County so that the plan meets our needs as well. So the grant funds will be utilized to establish a wild preparedness and sprinkler deployment guide that would be integrated with Lethbridge County. This plan will be a tactical level operational plan that will enhance our abilities to respond and protect life and critical assets within the city of Lethbridge, as well as the immediate surrounding fringe area of Lethbridge County. This initiative will be a life safety enhancement and fight against fast-moving wildfire in our region. Obviously, the pros is strengthens our intermunicipal collaboration, improves our fire response preparedness. There is no financial impact to it, and I think I would just like to strongly suggest that Council approves, and the recommendation is Council provides a letter of support for this grant application.
Thank you, Heath. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's a great opportunity for us. Once again, it shows our willingness to collaborate with the city of Lethbridge. And also, I think the other key part is that we'll be taking an active role and being part of it too. It's not just, supporting a program. It's actually having boots on the ground and having our voice at the table, and I think that's important. So, having said that, I would recommend or move that the council provides a letter of support for the grant application.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mark has moved that council provide a letter of support for the grant application as discussed. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would concur with what Mark said, and appreciate and understanding that when you have a wildfire event, the wildfire has no consideration for municipal boundaries. It's going to go where it wants to go, and it requires a combined effort to do everything to protect life and property. So something like this is not only a wonderful program for us to be involved in, it's absolutely necessary.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Is there any further discussion? Not? I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, Heath.
Thank you.
We have one more under, actually no. Yeah, we have one more under administration. We have F4.4. We have a verbal update. CIO report compensation review update. Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one will be really quick. I know we've had some conversations, and I just wanted to provide an update regarding the compensation review. So Jared Zeller and I excuse me, have had an opportunity to meet with the compensation consultant. For those that don't know, Jared, he's our Director of People and Culture. And so this aligns with Council's overall vision and direction to complete, to make decisions based on the best objective data that we can to ensure that we are providing the overall optimal value to our ratepayers. So we had an opportunity to meet with the compensation consultant for all out-of-scope positions. So this is non-unionized positions. We're conducting we've requested a full market analysis on every role in the organization, from frontline to CAO to Reeve to council. And after meeting with the compensation consultant, we went through his methodology and framework. We're doing a private and public market comparator. That will vary, and the sample size will vary depending on the role, to ensure that the comparators are statistically significant. So for example, a position like Reeve, there may be more limited comparators in that sample size, but going to a larger sample size would then start to skew that data to not reflect the nature of the municipality. So we are looking at everything from risk, complexity, decision-making, expectations, educational requirement, expertise for all of these positions. We're looking to remove the people from the positions, as well as, taking that second look to say, okay, we have these people in these positions that have these credentials. Are these credentials a requirement for the role? Are they above the role? And then there will be a couple that will have to do some of that more robust review. We don't know where the data is going to land. We have not seen that. We have another meeting next week to go through those findings. But just wanted to provide a update to council. I have information on the methodology and the framework, but if you have questions, there may be some limitations until we get that information and we review what the recommendations are. This, obviously, depending on the market model or the compensation model, will be associated with, recommendations related to performance management and expectations and everything else. We've been very clear that it is our belief that we want to be a premium employer in the region. We want to value our employees. We want to pay well, but we want to ensure that we have the top tier performance out of everyone throughout the organization, and that is reflected in the nature of our work and our efficiency and productivity and how we do business. So we don't have the overall findings, but just wanted to provide an update to council that this is occurring, and then once we have that, sort through it, have a chance to go through any questions that the compensation consultant may have, we'll be able to bring some of those items back to council for review and recommendation.
Thank you, Cole. Is there any questions, any discussion from council on that? Go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, not a whole lot of comment, just a question. Would we not be wiser to have this done, and maybe we're way ahead of it, before budget? Because, it could affect the budget in both ways.
Yes. So thank you, Councillor Vanderveen. Yes, it's been on our radar after reviewing potential compensation consultants and their expertise. We selected a compensation consultant that we felt would give us the best objective measure of this and the most robust comparators. And based on his availability, we just were not able to complete it in time. He had other obligations, and so we knew that it was going to happen in 2024, and we've been his priority client, and did a lot of that groundwork in 2023. We do not understand what those budget considerations will be at this time. We may, there may be a combination. We might have roles that are low that we need to address compensation so that we can ensure that we have the adequate tenure and support, in those positions. There might be some roles that are high. We'll have to review what that means, what our strategy is there. That might be case by case, depending on what the data says, what the recommendations are, and what the strategies that we would look to employ will be. We would have to have some of those discussions. So there might not be, depending on those recommendations, I think the commitment is that we want to align all positions to the market data and the recommendations that come forward. What the timeline for accomplishing that is will really have to come out of what the data tells us and how complicated it will be for us to move in that direction.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm making an assumption here, but maybe you can clarify this. I'm assuming that there is going to be very minimal impact on the 2024 budget, and you're doing this more in preparation of 2025 and beyond? Or is this something that you anticipate there may be an impact on the 2024 budget?
Thank you, Councillor Kurbis. I don't know to the extent. Preliminary conversations with the compensation consultant, I do think that we may have a couple positions that we would require some review or some funding for in the 2024 budget, and we can have those conversations. We know that we're just doing the year end and the audit. We anticipate that we have a surplus, which was discussed during the budget process. There may be a recommendation or considerations to say a small proportion of that will allow us to rectify those items. From what he's alluded to, I do think in time, any increases may also be reflected through alignment of other positions, and that through time it's probably a wash. That's the sentiment I get. What that variability is, I'm unsure at this time till we get that. If the recommendation is to say we're going to apply this to the 2025 budget based on the budgeting process, I think that's just a conversation we need to have once we have the information. I just don't have enough detail to provide an exact answer today, but I hope in the upcoming weeks, I think we'll have more detail around what the financial impacts are, but I still anticipate it will take us a few months to say, if we move in this direction, what are the impacts to the organization? What are the impacts to our performance management? How we set up our payroll systems? If we move to ranges versus grids? There's a lot of behind the scenes little things that would have to be considered. And once we go through that, then that would also help us make a better recommendation as to what the timeline for any of those changes may be, if there are any. I don't know yet.
Any other questions on this one? If not, thank you for the update, Cole. Appreciate it. We have 4 pieces of correspondence. I think one of them at least will generate some conversation, and then we have a closed session item. How are we doing for a break? Would we like to take a short break at this time, or would we like to? Okay. Before we recess, though, I do want to offer an apology to Reeve Curvis. I'm sorry. I did let my temper get the best of me, and I know you were well-intentioned in your comments, and you wanted to respect your fellow councilors, and in what I said, I disrespected you, so I just want to offer that apology. So, sorry, John. With that, why don't we take a short 5-minute recess, and we will reconvene for our correspondence. Thank you. meeting back to order at 11:34 this morning. Moving our agenda, item G, correspondence. We have 4 items of correspondence. Start number 1, the 13th Annual CARE Spring Seminar. So in your package, there's the brochure. It's the 13th Annual Alberta CARE Spring Seminar, February 28th to March 1st in Camrose, Alberta. That is part of our package there. You can take a look if you're interested. Move down to Southern Alberta Economic Summit 2024, item 2. You have with you a letter and the attachment from Peter Casarella at South Grove. Tickets are live for the 2024 Southern Alberta Economic Summit on March 21st, featuring keynote speaker Zachary Spicer and covering a host of issues that matter to us here in Southern Alberta. This event is being held on Thursday, March 21st. There are tickets available for that, so if you have interest in that one, follow up with Candace. I was fortunate to attend that one last year. That was a great event. Moving down, sorry, and stop me if there's want me to stop. Number 3, we have a letter from Ken Kearns. Maybe I'll read here a little bit, and then I will defer to our CAO. So we have a letter dated January 18th, 2024, read dust suppression, and it is addressed to Reeve Council, Lethbridge County. I'm writing to express my concern regarding the dust suppression program on the county-maintained roads adjacent to my property. The dust suppression that was applied to my road the middle of June 2023 was torn up by the grader operator in mid-December for a second year in a row. The road surface did not warrant this, and the dust was and will be covering the yard again. I notified the county last year regarding the premature dust suppression removal and attributed it to a new grader operator. I'm disappointed that this has happened again. I know over the years I've heard similar concerns around that. Maybe again I would just turn to you, Cole, and maybe give some context and just defer to you.
Thank you, Reeve Campbell. Yeah, this is a challenging one, and we understand and can appreciate our residents' frustrations where they've paid for dust suppression. You know, our challenge is that routine maintenance is a crucial aspect of ensuring safety for all travelers, and it's necessary in maintaining the integrity of our road network. And so there are instances where dust suppression is removed related to maintenance activities, and that is a understanding in terms of conditions of the dust suppression program. I think it is also one of the reasons that the program is so heavily subsidized by Lethbridge County. So when a ratepayer signs up and pays for the dust suppression program, the first 200 meters is subsidized at a 50% cost share between Lethbridge County and the ratepayer. You know, as per Mr. Kern's letter, there is a lot of heavy traffic on that road, so we can appreciate the dust implications to that, but we also have to recognize that that heavy traffic comes with maintenance activities that need to occur, and the variability of that timing, you know, in maintaining our level of service, it's hard to predict the number of months that it might be. I know that the operations team tries to take that into consideration and push some of those activities as far as they can within reason, but also we know that there is a certain efficiency and a requirement to maintain these roads, and that if we don't, we get a number of complaints as well. I do know that this particular roadway was graded due to the heavy traffic, and it had gone as long and as far as we felt comfortable in leaving it. But I also know that some of the dust suppression, and it varies. I have a few notes here, but is reinvigorated with moisture at times. They went through this morning following the moisture and the melt from the snow. A lot of that dust suppression appears to have been reactivated on this particular roadway as well. So not saying that the efficacy of the suppression remains the same. It is just a balancing, it's a balancing act for us to provide a service to our ratepayers while simultaneously maintaining that transportation network. And so I don't have a very clean answer other than I think the program works well. I think it would be our recommendation that for some of these concerns and frustrations that we continue to to subsidize it through 2024, which I believe we've, council has had those conversations. But part and parcel with that is we have other routine maintenance activity that we have to do. And when you sign up for that program, we cannot guarantee a specified number of months because there are other risks and liability to doing so.
Thank you, Cole. I would open up to council for any, do you have any comments? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did talk to Ken, and I suggested that he write a letter in, because he has complained about this before. And his neighbor to the south is the same way. I guess his main concern was, it seems like further north to the next road, and I can't remember the road number, was not done there. So he was concerned about why it keeps getting done in his place. Get up the road, it's exactly the same condition, but not touched. So that's his biggest issue.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hickey, and without getting into this specific situation, because I think, for both Jeremy and I, we'd be speculating onto exactly why. I do know that we have condition assessments that funnel into our level of service and the priority maintenance activities that happen on those roads and what those requirements are. We are continuing to refine some of those to try and remove some of that subjectivity, but it is also very difficult for us to anecdotally say that road condition there is the exact same as this road condition here. We can go 1 mile away on the same roadway, traffic counts can vary drastically. I mean, we do this in our capital planning, and we can see 70-80% reductions in heavy industrial type traffic just because of adjacencies and proximity. So perceptually, same roadway, but there's variances there. There's drainage, there's the construction, there's the deflection, there's a bunch of other things that are not in my wheelhouse, but are very much, in our operations team purview and expertise, and they advise on some of that. I will not say that we get it right every time. I will not say that, we are actively doing work to improve our assessment and our priority and our scheduling. I have confidence in the team that we're in a good place, and we're continuing to head in a better place to make better decisions and more informed decisions in that regard. It's just, I would encourage people to not look at it in that way, and hopefully we can do a better job in educating the public into what those priorities are, our considerations, the multifactorial considerations that go into some of this work, so that even when maybe it feels like it's not exactly equal, that they have confidence in the approach, knowing that we're trying to provide the best level of service for all of our ratepayers.
Thanks, Cole. Anything else from council on that item? Would we be able to have a letter response go out to Mr. Kernson?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Item 4, Town of Nobleford Notice of Intent to Annex Land. We received a letter dated January 23rd, 2024, addressed to Reeve Campbell. Notice of intent to annex land pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, Revised Statutes of Alberta 2000, Chapter M26, Section 116. Notice is hereby given of the intent of the Town of Nobleford to proceed with an application to annex land from Lethbridge County. I am just going to try and be as brief here as I can. The purpose of the annexation application is to annex lands and roadways into the corporate boundary of the Town of Nobleford, which is required for future non-residential growth. Preliminary discussions have been held with the affected landowner and the Intermunicipal Development Plan Committee, March 2023, and plans are underway to schedule an open house to consult with the public regarding the proposed annexation. Is there anything council would like to add on that one? Go ahead, Klaus.
Can you explain where that exactly is? Is that north of the town, or?
There is a map.
Where's the map? There is a map?
Good job.
Oh, I never see the map. Oh, sorry, guys.
When you were reading this morning.
Took away from my breakfast time.
Are you done? Okay. Yeah, I
think Hillary's going to, you to bring it up.
Oh, Hillary's bringing it up? Okay, perfect.
I can answer any questions if you have with regards to the annexation process.
I was just gonna put my 2 bits in because I'm on the Intermunicipal Development Plan Committee, and this is also in relationship to a subdivision application that we approved, I believe, in November, maybe a little bit earlier
It
than that.
was, I think in the late summer, early fall.
Yeah, late summer, early fall, and I mean, this is just part of Nobleford's planned expansion of their industrial park, and this has been something that has been ongoing and in the works for the last year and a half. So it's nice to see that you know, the official annexation process has now been started. So
Thanks, John. Anything else on that one? Thank you, Hillary. With that, that brings us to the end of our correspondence and the end of our public meeting. So if there's nothing else, thank you, staff and everyone for joining us this morning for our public meeting. We have one closed session item, CAO report, CBEC, WIPE section 16, 17, 23, and 24. So with that, I would entertain, go ahead, Lauren.
I would make a motion to enter a closed session.
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren has moved to enter a closed session at 11:45 this morning. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Those in favor? We'll resume our public meeting at 12:48 this morning. Anything further? If not,
I move, so that'd be adjourned.
Morris has moved to adjourn at 12:49. Thank you, Morris. Thank you, council. Thanks, Candace. Thanks, Cole.